Let's do the intro. Yeah. Okay.
Hey everyone, I'm Caleb Dante, and this is the beginning of a series that I don't have a name for yet, where we will be interviewing influential individuals from the motorcycle club world to hear the truth about their trials, tribulations, the good stories, the bad stories, and everything in between. And today, as my first guest, I've got John Spike Ingrao.
OG Spike.
OG Spike, who is the last original member of the Warlocks Motorcycle Club. So Spike, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay, I was born and raised in the Bronx, South Bronx of New York. I was born in 1950. I became a motorcycle enthusiast, and in 1968 I got my first motorcycle. I bought a Panhead, 48 Panhead. I loved to ride, but I never wanted to get in the motorcycle club. And I hung out in New York, and a couple of clubs around and tried to recruit me, which I didn't want no part of. I just wanted to be a free rider. So by 1970, New York was starting to go bad, so I decided to move to Florida. I moved to out on the outskirts of Orlando, Florida, and I met some motorcycle enthusiasts there, and you know, they all rode Harley Davidsons, and we were just a bunch of free riders, having fun. And none of these guys didn't want to be in a motorcycle club, and we were all young. I was 20 years, well, when I came to Florida, I was actually, I was still 19 years old. You know, it wasn't until the September 28th, I became, well, I was 20 years old, you know, in 1970, but in September. So I was 19. All these guys were about my age. One of the first guys I met was only 17. That was little Mike. And then I met several guys, and of course, everybody was young back then. I think the oldest guy in that group was like 24, 25 years old. And half the guys were married, and a lot of them had little babies, you know, a year old. When I first met Grub, he had a little infant son. It was only a few months old. Actually, when I met Grub, his wife was pregnant. That's what it was. She was pregnant. And but a couple of the other guys had little infant kids, you know, little daughters and sons and stuff like that. And we were just a little motorcycle club. Everybody known us as the Lockhart Motorcycle Boys, you know. Well, it wasn't really a motorcycle club. We didn't pay dues. We would just get together, and you know, we'd get together at someone's house and we'd drink some beer, have a little meeting, and go for a ride. You know, and usually on Wednesday nights we'd get together. Everybody would chip in like $3, and we'd buy a few cases of beer. We would drink beer and then go for a motorcycle ride and have a good time. We'd during the week, we'd just go to different bars, and on the weekends, we'd go to Ocala over in Buck Lake, and we'd camp out. And then on the weekends, we'd play softball at Lockhart Middle School. They had a Lockhart Middle School it was in Orlando, but it was a little town called Lockhart. And they had a school there, a middle school, and we used to play ball at the middle school. And, you know, we'd have a great time. And the women, the guys and the girls. So we would incorporate the wives as well on the team. And some of them wives, they were better ball players than the guys. But we had a blast. We had a lot of fun. So this went on for quite a while. And then I would say by the end of by the end of 1970, we was approached. I don't want to really mention the name of the other club, but we was approached by a big 1% motorcycle club, and basically they came around and they started hanging with us, and they tried to recruit us. And it came down to the point where they just said, either you're going to be with us or you're not, and if we catch you riding your motorcycle together, we'll shoot you off your motorcycle. Well, me being fresh out of New York and being full-blooded Sicilian, I said, what in the hell is this bullshit? I said, no one threatens me. So at the time when all this took place, they actually recruited 6 of our members, actually went to the other side. So it kind of broke the club up. So we regrouped, got together, and me and Tommy Freeland, known as Grub, unfortunately, he was the founder. He's passed away. I'm the only one left from the original. And that's when he showed me the Warlock patch. And the deal was they started a motorcycle club on the USS Shangri-La in 1967. And there was originally 13 members, which kind of grew after they started the original 13 members, and they managed to get a couple more sailors on board. The deal was when everybody went back to their hometown that they was going to start a motorcycle club. Well, unfortunately, it did not happen. There were 2 chapters that actually got started. One was in Jax Beach, Florida, and the other one was in Louisville, Kentucky. And by 1969, after they got off the ship and these fellas went to their home, both of those chapters were shut down by this club. So that's why it never went anywhere.
And that one in Kentucky is the same one that was in Florida, right?
No, Kentucky, the guys from Kentucky, there were 2 guys from Kentucky that came off the boat, went back home to Kentucky, tried to start the chapter, and they got shut down. And then we had another guy from the ship start a chapter in Jax Beach. And with a couple of Navy sailors, and the rest were just civilians. It got shut down just about as within a few months after they started. I don't know the exact how many days or how many months, but I know it was only a few months.
And these were different clubs shutting those guys down than what shut?
Actually, actually they were different clubs that shut them down, but the one in Jacksonville became part of the one that was in Louisville from this big club.
Okay.
So this particular club came over and kind of threatened us. So I don't take kindly to threats. I'm that type of person. You're not going to threaten me and get away with it. So I basically said to Grub, well, fuck them. Let's put this on our back. If they're going to shoot us, let's put a target on the back. And Grub said, I remember the day, it was on a Sunday, it was in the afternoon, and we were at his house drinking some beer. And he said, yeah, well, that's all well and good. We put this on our back, but he says, it's only me and you. He says, 2 of us can't do this. I said, well, how about we call around and see what we got? So we called around to all the people that didn't go the other route to the club, because we lost 6 guys to them people. And we called around and we managed to get 7 of the people. Actually, we got 7 of us that decided that we're going to do this. And that's how the Warlocks started in 1971. February 7th, 1971 is when we officially restarted the Warlocks. And we started it out of Lockhart, Florida. Or if you want to call it Orlando. We called it Lockhart because it actually started in Lockhart, which is a little tiny town that was part of Orlando. Now it's all incorporated. And well, here we are today. And we went from that one chapter, we have over 30, I don't know, what was it, like 39 chapters we have now?
I'm sure it's something like that. And then, of course, you guys are...
It's almost 40 chapters that we have.
And then you're here in the States?
We're here in the States. And we're in Germany. We got 2 chapters in Germany. We got several chapters in Canada. And...
England.
And we have 3 chapters in England.
That's awesome.
And the club's still growing.
So let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm probably going to hit a lot of points that you think are very, like, you're probably going to wonder why I'm asking, but just to get the specifics on the record.
I got you. I'm open for anything you got to throw at me. Come on, shoot.
So let's back up to when you were in New York.
Okay.
You were 20 years old when you bought that first bike, and it was a Panhead, right?
Actually, I was younger than that.
Okay.
Because I left New York when I was 19.
Okay, so you're 19.
I was at 18 years old.
And you bought it wasn't brand new.
Oh, no, it was in 1948. And this was in 1968. So the bike was 20 years old.
Okay. And
I paid $1,500 for it.
Which back then was a lot of money.
It was a hell of a lot of money in 1968. $1,500 was a lot of money.
So prior to being the 18-year-old buying this Panhead, what got you interested in motorcycles enough where you felt comfortable spending all that money on a Panhead like that?
My father rode motorcycles all his life, and he had a motorcycle. That's what got me. My dad's first bike was I think it was a I don't remember if his first bike was an Indian or a knucklehead, but he had both Indians and knuckleheads. And I know his knucklehead was a 1946 knucklehead, because him and his friend, he had a friend in New York that he used to ride with, and they both went down and bought 2 brand new knuckleheads, and I think they paid like $400 or $500 a piece for brand new motorcycles.
Wow.
1946, they paid about $400 or $500. They both bought brand new Harley Davidson.
Which I'm not going to do it right now because we're in the middle of this, but I'd really like to see what the math is on the conversion of what that would cost now. Probably a lot.
Yeah.
So that pushed you into that. And then you didn't like where New York was going. What made you pick Florida out of all the places to go?
Actually, I was looking to go out west. I thought about Arizona. There was a couple of places that I would have liked to go on. What happened was, my mom loved Florida, but it was my father that wanted to stay, because my father was one of the people that he didn't like change. So I had to convince my mom to talk to my father to get him to move. And I moved the family down, and I paid their mortgage on their house for the first 2 years.
Everybody moved.
Oh, I had my whole family move.
Okay.
Yeah, I told him it's getting bad down here. So I moved my whole family. I made him a deal. I said, look, if you can convince Dad to move to Florida, find a place in Florida that you like. I said, doesn't matter where. I said, just find a place in Florida that you like. I will pay your mortgage for however long it takes for you guys to get on your feet. And then I'm going on my own. So my parents came down. My parents came down to Florida to look. And while they were down looking, they went to Fort Lauderdale. They went to Ocala. They went to several places. They happened to like Orlando the best. And while I was in New York, and I was watching my sister, my younger sister, and they took the other siblings with them, I was jumped by a street gang from another neighborhood, and I got beat up pretty severely. So then I knew it was time to move. So when my family called home, my sister told what happened, and they said, we're coming home. And I basically told my parents, do not come home without buying a house. I said, because if I have to, I'll burn this fucking house to the ground. I'm not staying in New York no more. I said, you find a house. This is it for me. I've had it. And I had a great job making good money back then. I just wanted to get the fuck out of New York. It was a shithole. Back in 1970, it was a shithole. And then it got worse. Mayor Giuliani changed the city, and now it's really a cesspool up there now. But anyway, if that'll answer your question.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
And then, so you moved down to Florida in 69, or was it 70?
Actually, 70.
Okay, so you moved down in 70, and then obviously you're riding your motorcycle around. So how are you making these friends? Are you just bouncing around to the bars and like those guys?
No. I was too young to go to a bar.
Okay.
So basically, I'd ride around and I'd run into these people on motorcycles and made friends with them. And while I was down, 2 large motorcycle groups confronted me. two big 1% groups that were in Florida at the time. One was out of Orlando, one was out of St. Pete. And they wanted me to join, and I didn't want no part of a 1% motorcycle club. I was happy being a free rider. And actually, I ran into these other club guys before I met any of these other guys because I started going to the motorcycle shops, and they happened to be at the motorcycle shops, except for the other group from St. Pete. I met them in Lake Eola. I was hanging out at Lake Eola. They had a nice big lake there with one of those water structures.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's a night. You just sit around there and, just sit around there. It was a nice, relaxing place on Lake Eola downtown. It was really nice, relaxing. And I used to like to go down there and just hang out, with a couple of guys, and we just sit around, chew the fat. Couldn't go to no bars, so. And then like to go for rides and weekends and stuff like that.
So what was your perspective being a free rider then? And of course, there's no Sons of Anarchy. There's no mainstream news about stuff. What was the free rider's perspective or the civilian perspective of clubs back then? So when you saw those guys out and about, what did you think of them?
Well, first of all, it was the way they looked. They were all dirty looking, nasty looking, grubby looking, it's one thing to have long hair and a beard. And it's another thing to have clothes on that look like you've been wearing them for a year. Greasy pants, greasy hair, unkept, and their attitude about it, just their attitudes. And that, like, nothing was important but them. That was the 1% lifestyle that they had. It was them and only them, and fuck the rest.
Were the guys that you had seen in motorcycle clubs in New York kind of like that too, or were they different?
Basically the same.
Yeah.
They'd go around and more or less they were bullies.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't stand bullies.
So, and then from there, you're hanging out in Florida, you're seeing these guys, but then you made these friends in Lockhart that are all free riders.
Right.
Which then a couple of those end up being the guys off the Shangri-La.
No, there was only, in Lockhart, there was only one person off the Shangri-La, and that was Grub. He's the only one. He got off the Shangri-La. He came back to Orlando. The rest of them went their separate ways. Like I said, one went back to Minnesota. They had two of them to Kentucky. I think there were a couple of them went to New York and other states. I'm not familiar with all the other states they went to. And
for the record, Grub is who the club considers the founder, correct?
They consider Grub the founder, yes, because he was the only one that did anything at the very end after they got off the USS Shangri-La. He's the only one that actually took the club and did something with it. But he didn't do it until we got threatened, and I stood behind him and kind of said, let's do it. Fuck them.
Yeah. And, rest in peace to Grub. It's been, 4 years now?
He's 4 years, almost going on 5, yeah. I miss him dearly. He was the real deal. Grub was the real deal. He'd tell you like it is. He was very smart. He was a close brother to me. We both ran the club together. He was the actual boss, but I ran the club. But okay. He was the boss. But Grub was the type of person that did not like to. He talked to you when he wanted to, but he didn't like to talk a lot. He was pretty quiet some of the times. But he was intelligent, and we worked as a great team. We worked well together. Grub was more of a, how can I say this here? Grub was more of a peaceful type of person, smooth transitions, where I was a radical. So Grub had his hands full with me. We were on the same page, but I did things different than him. And he always had me had to put his thumb on me on a couple of occasions, but sometimes it didn't work.
That's funny. So in 71, those guys pissed y'all off and you said, fuck it, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so tell me about how it went from 71. Let's just go through the 70s. Tell me how most of that went.
Well, once we decided to go on to start a club, and that the other team found out about us after they took our guys, we went to war with them. And when I say war, it was literally shootouts. They come by, drive by, shoot your house up.
Clubhouse or your actual home?
Homes, our homes. Not clubhouses. We didn't have a clubhouse. We were having meetings at homes, but they found out where people lived and started shooting it up. And what really pissed me off was we had a member, and he had two daughters. One was 4, one was 6. One Saturday morning, they're sitting in the living room watching cartoons, and this other club comes by and sprays the house full of bullets. And the bullets came within a foot of the girls' heads. And of course, here's one of the members. He had enough. He didn't want no more part of it. He didn't want his daughters to die. I didn't blame him. And then they shot up Billy's house. They shot up Dutch's house. Billy wasn't married. Dutch wasn't married. And they never did find my house until the late 80s. I think it was 1989. They finally found out where I lived, but I had moved from one house to another. But I was so far away, and I lived way out in the woods. Considering back then it was considered the woods. I was out in the sticks. It's no more sticks now. It's all built up. But yeah, they didn't find my house until almost 1989. 88, I think. It was 88. I think it was the end of 88 is they actually found out where I lived.
Okay. So when we were talking last night, I know that this was kind of a culture shock for me, and I'd wondered about this for a while, but for a lot of guys my age, which I'm in my early 20s, I'm younger, when we see a lot of club stuff now, it's a lot of older guys, usually 30, 40 plus, and we think that's kind of how it's always been. But from what you were telling me back then, you and the other team was all young guys, right? Like all.
Yeah, everybody was young. Like I said, when we started out, and I got in, there was 4 of us. It was me and 3 other people that I met, came over to join up with Grub's little group that he had set. There was 17 of them, which made 21 of us. The oldest person, I believe, was 25 years old. There were 2 brothers. One was 24, one was 25. Grub was I think Grub was 22. When I came to Florida, I was 19. So I didn't quite hit 20 years old at the time. Little Mike was 17. But when we actually became Warlocks, little Mike was 18 and I was 20. And of course, back then, our bylaws stated that you had to be at least 18 years old. Well, we changed that law to 21 years later because you couldn't even get into a bar.
So back then, did you guys, as these young 20-some-year-old guys, sit down and write out paper bylaws, or was it just a handful of rules that y'all just understood?
Mm-mm. We actually sat down and wrote a set of bylaws, and there was only 10 bylaws. They were real simple. And you had to have a Harley-Davidson motorcycle.
Couldn't have been an Indian?
No.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. It's been so long, I can't remember all the rules, but they were all simple. You had to be 18 years old, had to have a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and I can't remember some of the other. It was all simple stuff. Now they got hundreds of rules, and you have to be 21.
When did that go from 18 to 21? Probably not long after, huh?
I would say within the first few years, we made it to where it was 21, only because of the fact that people couldn't get into the bars.
Okay. So 71.
So you couldn't be a probate until you was 21 years old, plus the maturity part of it. Because a lot of times you take these kids in that are 18 years old, they don't even know what they want in life. And little Mike wound up joining the military, and that was the end of that.
Really?
Yeah, he wound up going into the Air Force. And at first, he'd come around and visit us for the first year, and then after that, we never seen him anymore, and we don't know what happened to him.
Huh. So he just kind of washed hands?
He kind of, he made the Air Force a career for him. I don't even know if he's still alive. I never heard from him. We heard from him for about the first year he was in the military, and then it kind of disappeared.
Okay, so then this is roughly around probably getting into what, 72, 73, pushing up towards 74.
Well, by 73, little Mike had joined the military.
Okay. So then what happened kind of in that later half of the 70s?
Well, we started recruiting people, and we're recruiting everybody coming out of Vietnam, all motorcycle enthusiasts. And these guys, they didn't care about fighting. They loved to fight. They were just looking for the camaraderie of the brotherhood, motorcycle enthusiasts coming home from Vietnam and just wanted the camaraderie that they had in the military, but with motorcycle enthusiasts. And so they felt at home. So they came into the club, and they knew there was that war with this other big 1% motorcycle club. They were one of the biggest they were the second biggest in the United States. And so they weren't afraid of fighting. But after a while, it gets old after a while, 10 years of fighting, you're ready to give the shit up, because the war lasted. I got busted in 91, and I had been at war with them for 20 years. The war went on for over 30 years.
Was it always that consistent of just everybody shooting up everybody, or were there times?
Well, the worst times were in the 70s. That was when the most places were getting shot up. It kind of backed off. It kind of backed off in the 80s a little bit, but we had our skirmishes. There was a little bit of peacetime when a different boss came in, but we still had our fights on the street. We still had to contend with all their support clubs coming at us, but we were kicking some ass.
Okay.
Because we had some tough son of a bitches back in the day.
Well, yeah, especially with Vietnam vets that are fresh out of Vietnam. I would expect so.
And you're talking about some of these guys with special forces, airborne guys, special forces and stuff like that coming back. They weren't scared of shit.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we had one guy, he had just gotten out of the service, and he happened to be riding with us one day. And as we're riding down the road, this other club took a shot at him. And I believe they were trying to shoot his rear tire out. Of course, that's part of their MO, to shoot your tire out. And they hit his old lady in the ass. And the first thing he did was says, "How do I become a warlock?" After his old lady got shot in the ass. How do I become a warlock? And he started probating, because we didn't ask anybody. We weren't begging for people to come in the club. They were wanting to come around us. We was having a lot of fun. We was out riding our motorcycles, laughing and joking around. And these guys seen what we was having fun. They want to be part of us.
So it wasn't always shootouts and worrying about people shooting your place up. It was going out to the bars, having fun and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And but the kicker was going. Ooh, I'm sorry. The kicker was us going to Buck Lake, hanging out all weekend long, having a great time, sitting by the campfire, drinking beer, smoking a little bit of pot. Nobody did any drugs back then. Just smoked a little bit of pot, drank beer, no hard liquor, just beer, a little bit of pot, having a great time at the campfire. We had this rule: you couldn't go to bed before 12 o'clock at night, or you'd get pissed on. Yeah, that was a rule. You don't fall asleep before 12 o'clock midnight, or somebody come over and piss on you.
Was there guys that got pissed on?
If you fell asleep before 12 o'clock at night, yeah. And I wasn't one of them, believe me. Now, I do remember one night, Grub decided to retire early. And I think he wound up, we're all on our bikes, but you always have to have somebody drive a vehicle to carry the food and carry the beer or whatever you bring into the campground, the tents, all the sleeping bags and all that crap. So, so Grub, I don't remember whose truck it was. It might have been Grub's truck, and they had a little camp. They had this little topper on the back, so he had his little mattress in there. So him and his, I believe it was him and his old lady went in the back to sleep, and of course he's in there. And one of the members at the time, he was a drunk, and he liked to screw with people, and he started messing with Grub. And it was like, I remember it was about midnight. Grub got up and shoved a shotgun in his face. He says, "You fuck with me, motherfucker, I'll blow your head off." And he just left. But the nice thing to the story was, I remember the next morning, this guy kept everybody up all night long with his bullshit. The next morning when I woke up, I got one of the members that he happened to have a sports. Now you got to remember, we're in the woods. We are in the woods. So the ground is not level, but we're in the woods camped out. And the drunk was in his sleeping bag, and we tied a rope to his feet and the sleeping bag, tied it to the back of the Sportster, and drug him around. He got up bitching. I told him, "Shut the fuck up or I'm gonna knock you out. You kept us up all night. Now you're getting back what you deserve, you son of a bitch." And he got lumped up not from getting hit, just from, they drug his ass. I mean, they drug him around. We were laughing our asses off. It was the best. That was one of the best times I had, watching that fool get drugged around in the sleeping bag. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't do nothing. He couldn't get out. His legs are tied up. It was great. I mean, the money we could have made if we would have filmed that. Could you imagine filming that and it be on the money we could have made? Holy shit. We did some crazy shit back in the days. And if it would have been on film, I'd be a millionaire today showing this shit.
So did that guy get all upset about it and leave, or did he
No, he was upset about it, but he stayed a drunk. And he was just a bum. He wasn't military. He wasn't shit. He just happened to be somebody that I worked with. We worked with. And he probated. Him and his brother probated. And his brother was pretty decent, but he was a piece of garbage. And I finally got tired. And the only reason why was, he was a good guy when he wasn't drinking. But when he was drinking, he was an asshole. And finally I had an all I can take. And one day I just beat the shit out of him, took his shit, sent him down the road.
Yeah. I wanted to dive into that one because I feel like now a lot of times, at least with people and guys in my generation, if something like that were to happen, they'd probably get their panties in a wad and they'd probably leave and you'd never see them again type of deal.
We had a different type of people back in the 70s.
Yeah.
You could lump these people up and they'll take their lumps. Nowadays, nobody wants to fight no more. Everybody wants to run to the fucking cops, or they want to pull out a gun and they want to fight with guns. There's too many pussies in this world today. Nobody wants to fight. I'm 73 years old. And somebody comes fucking with me, I'm going to stand up there and kick the shit out of them. I ain't taking no shit from nobody. Now, one-on-one, I'll be fine. But more than one, I may have my hands full. I'm 73 now. I didn't care about that when I was younger, because when I was younger, it was a different story. But anyway. Break time?
You got to go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So anyways, we were talking about the 70s, and you were saying about how guys back then are a whole different breed as to now.
Right.
And then, so when you guys started the club, obviously one of the biggest reasons was because you guys were riding and you couldn't be left alone, even being free riders. So you said, fuck it, if they want us to be a club, we'll be a club.
Right.
But what was What did you guys want for the club, or what did you guys want the club to be back then?
We just wanted to be left alone. We never wanted to get any bigger. We never wanted to get out of Florida. We just wanted to be left alone. We just put the patch on our back in defiance to the other club. We never planned on growing. Grub never had any intentions of going outside of Florida. And it didn't work out that way, because when Ed Hopke, known as Kid, who is now passed on, was one of the originals from USS Shangri-La, and found out that Grub actually got the club going. He was already in another motorcycle club called the Iron Range Motorcycle Club, and he had about 18 members, and he switched them all over to Warlocks, and then we had a chapter in Minnesota.
And then
And then we had 2 members move to California, and they started a California chapter. And to me, I said, that is just too damn far. Florida to California, Florida to Minnesota. And here we are traveling to California for one party, Minnesota for another. We had 3 nationals a year. It was just too much. It was hard for everybody.
Were you guys riding to both of those, California and
Those
Minnesota?
bikes couldn't make it there. We had a trailer them. Those bikes couldn't travel 2,500, 3,000 miles. Those bikes couldn't even make it across the state of Florida without breaking down. You got to remember, the bikes in the 60s and 70s were junk. Those panheads, they were good for about 3 months. And then you'd have to tear them down and rebuild them again. And when I came around, mostly everybody was on Sportsters. Now, Sportsters, they were very dependable bikes. The only problem with a Sportster, you got a little bitty tank on there, and you get about 50, 60 miles, and you're stopping for gas.
And that's on the old Ironhead Sportsters.
Yeah.
Not the Evo Sportsters.
Right.
But then you were telling me that you guys used to have cards, and this is why I brought up that question about when you guys first started, you had these cards that said, what did it say, Brotherhood and Safety on it?
Right. Our cards had Warlocks MC, dedicated to brotherhood and safety.
And everybody was in agreement on that. That's what it was about.
Absolutely. Yes, it was all about brotherhood back then. We had a thing going on where you would buddy up. We didn't have cell phones back then, and most of the guys didn't even have a regular phone at home. I had a phone at home, so they actually had to get on a pay phone and call at a certain time of day to let everybody know that they're doing good. So what we did was, and this was Grub's idea, and he said, look, this is what we're going to do. Everybody's going to pair up with somebody, and we're going to let everybody know everything's going on, because now we're at war. There's 7 of us, and we just went up against a club that's got 3,500 members, and there was over 120 just in the state of Florida. They're looking to kill us. So we wanted to make sure everybody knew where everybody was at. We had to be careful where we went, where we rode, who we were with, and never ride alone. And make sure you're carrying, be legal, and make sure you're carrying your piece on you, just to protect yourself. It wasn't like we were going around trying to start any shit. We just wanted protection. And but it worked out well. We would all contact twice a day, one time in the morning, one in the late afternoon, and then of course somebody, and then everybody would kind of call Grub and let him know that everybody's doing good. We only had a few people, and I remember one time they got a call and said that I was in trouble. And it was a bullshit call, because I happened to be with another member, and we was doing some body work on my car. And so everybody rushed down thinking that I was in trouble, and I wasn't. It was just a bullshit call that somebody made. I don't know who it was, but for some reason they thought I was in trouble. But that's how tight we were. Somebody thought something wasn't wrong, we'd be there in a minute.
The guys were all up when they got that call and they tried to find you, and they found you working on that car? Or?
No, they went to the area where we were supposed to be at, and I was supposed to be in trouble, and it wasn't there. So they didn't know. By that time, some calls were made, and they found out where I was at, and then everything was okay. Somebody started some bullshit rumor like you're always going to have. 90% of the stuff you hear is all bullshit anyway. Even on TV and the news, it's bullshit. Can't believe everything you hear. If you do, you're stupid.
Yeah, that's a good one. I've always been told, don't believe anything you hear and only half of what you see.
Yeah, that's true too. But 90% of what you hear is bullshit. And even then, the 10% you think is not bullshit, you better check it out.
Yeah. So then we're getting through the 70s, and so actually, let's keep it in the 70s for a minute. You guys all started off the brotherhood and safety thing,
Right.
and you guys just wanted to ride together. Did any, here, actually, I've got it written down here. Did the founders and you original guys, did anybody bring crime to the club, or was it all newer guys later on?
We weren't doing anything illegal. The only thing that we did illegal was the fact that we drank and drove our motorcycles. But back then, it was not a big deal, you know, as long as you weren't driving off the road or anything like that. And the only other thing that we did illegal was smoke some pot. But other than that, no, we weren't doing anything illegal until we had trouble with the other side, and then fights broke out and shootouts broke out. Of course, that's not legal at all. But we weren't doing anything wrong. And I never really got in any trouble in my life.
So you guys were comfortable with that amount of stuff. So then we get into the 80s. You guys are starting to expand, right?
Yeah, well, we was expanding in the 70s, and then we started more expansion in the 80s, yes.
Okay. So when you guys were expanding, is that when you would say people started bringing crime to the club, new members? And
well, in the 80s, I don't remember exactly what year, but someone introduced cocaine to the club.
Oh,
and at first it wasn't bad. It was a couple of bumps here, bumps there, you know. The next thing you know, people are starting to do it. It's becoming a big thing. And I was against it, although I had done a little bit, but I was against it, you know.
As a whole.
It becomes a habit. If you do something once in a while, it's not bad. It's like you drink a cup of coffee every morning, but now when you're drinking a pot of coffee at night when you come home, there's something wrong with that. You know, but I'm just saying, when you overindulge, it becomes a problem. Then that's where the lying comes in, the stealing comes in, the bullshit comes in, the cheating. And yes, then it got worse, because then all of a sudden you heard about crack cocaine. Well, some of the guys thought it was cool to smoke it until they got caught. And I kicked them out of the club. Now,
so even then it was bad enough.
Oh yeah. I did not want crack cocaine in the club at all. I tolerated cocaine, the powder, but when they did it in the clubhouse, I became irate. I remember walking in the clubhouse one night, and there was 3 of them sitting there, and they had an 8-ball of cocaine on a plastic plate. I walked up to them. I said, "What the fuck is this?" And they're kind of looking at me. I hit that plate so hard, that shit went flying everywhere. And they just had this dumbfounded look on my face. I says, "Go ahead, say something to me, motherfucker. I'll rip your fucking heads off." I said, "This fucking clubhouse is in my fucking name. And if you get busted, they're coming after me. They're taking this clubhouse from me, and they're going to come after my house." I said, "I don't want this shit in this fucking clubhouse. You want to do the shit, do it somewhere else, but don't do it in the fucking clubhouse." And of course, I had a lot of problems, and now I'm the bad guy. But I'm running the show. It was my show to run. This is the way I want the fucking shit to happen.
Did the other originals feel the same way about the coke and the crack?
Well, actually, we had a different group of people in the 80s than we did in the 70s. Because the guys in the 70s, they weren't doing that. You know, they would drink and smoke a little bit of dope. But at the end of the 70s into the 80s, a lot of them were leaving. they got out in the military. They wanted to go on with their lives. So we got a different group of people coming in, and these guys were doing the drugs that one of the old members in the 70s brought into the club.
So how many of those 7 from the 70s stayed into the 80s?
I would say maybe 6 or 7 of them.
So almost all of them stayed.
No, because in the 70s, we had, in the 70s when I was a chapter boss, I had 29 members and 6 probates. And I remember patching in all the probates. And then there toward the end of the 70s, people started leaving, started weeding people out, new people were coming in.
So it grew and then shrunk at the end of the 70s and then grew again in the 80s.
Well, it didn't really shrink. As people were leaving, I had new people coming in, but we got a different breed of people coming in.
I lost a lot of those Vietnam vets and stuff, and then you started...
Well, we were getting civilians off the street, people that were never in the military, people that didn't have discipline, people that were just wild children, people that wanted to be something that were nobody. And I think some of these people, the shit was going to their head. They thought because they put a patch on their back that they're Billy Jack, But that happens in all the clubs. People want to be part of something, but then all of a sudden they're part of something and they're some big, bad, tough guy. You put them out on the street against somebody else and they don't want to do nothing. You put them in a crowd and all of a sudden they're a tough guy. That's in all the clubs. Yeah. I don't care what club it is. That's how it is.
That mob mentality.
I went after these gangsters one-on-one. They did not want to fight me. I chased one of these motherfuckers around the car for about 10 minutes. I couldn't catch the son of a bitch. And I was going to beat his fucking ass. And he tried to kill me. This motherfucker tried to kill me at a later date. And if it wasn't that his gun jammed, I'd have been dead. And he's still in jail for murder. He killed somebody. Somebody that I knew. I didn't know him personally, but I knew of this guy. He killed him for no stupid reason at all. 3 of these guys started some shit with a guy and got their asses beat. He beat 3 of these members up from this other club. And he fucked them up really bad. They went over there and he was harassing his girlfriend and telling him how they wanted to fuck her and all this and wanted to play with the titties and this and that. He says, look, man, I don't want no trouble. Just leave me alone. They started giving him shit. He beat the shit out of them. So one of them managed to get back to the car or the truck he was in, got a gun, went over and shot him and killed him, then took off.
Because they were messing with that guy's old lady.
Mm-hmm. And the guy beat him up.
That's real smart.
Anyway, the son of a bitch is still in fucking jail from today. And that happened in the early 80s. Okay. And the guy's still in jail for it. Meanwhile, the guy that it happened to is still dead, of course.
So what else was going on there? Obviously, the club was kind of turning a new leaf because of the people that were coming around. And the war is still going on and off there at the early.
The war was still going on, but it wasn't as intense as it was in the 70s.
So what else was going on there at the turn of the decade?
What do you mean by what else is going on?
Just like,
well, we were still riding. We were still going here. We were still going there. We continued to grow.
Were you still Florida only around 1980?
Oh no. We was
or Florida and Minnesota, I guess.
We expanded into South Carolina. We were in Pensacola. We had 4 or 5 chapters just in Florida alone. We started expanding to other states.
And then what else happened as you came into the 80s? Was there, were you guys starting to have like big events, or was it getting more organized?
Well, as we got older, we got a little bit more organized, because as youngsters, we didn't know what the hell we were doing, but we got more. As the club grew, we learned a lot of things, especially me. I learned a lot of things over the years, things you could do, things you can't do, being a leader and stuff like that. Yeah, we got a little bit more discipline. We kept better records. We started making little different patches, meaningful patches. Before, when we first started out, what we had was a top rocker, the bird, and the bottom rocker. We didn't have any other patches on our jacket. And then we had Harley Davidson patches and crap like that. And then that was about it. And then we wore name tags, and then we took them off, for obvious reasons. Having a name tag on your vest, we took them off. But yeah, in the 80s, yeah, we were doing things better. Oh, we started owning property where we didn't in the 70s. The 80s is when we started owning property. I bought the first clubhouse in 1981. The first clubhouse purchased was the Orlando Clubhouse in 1981.
Is that the one you guys still have today or no?
We still have it. It's not the same clubhouse. It's the same property. Because the house got burnt down the first time, and the second time got blown up by our rivals, and this is the third one that's there now.
Okay. And then at that point, you guys were expanding. You weren't begging people to come.
No. We never do. We would invite people around if they were interested. That's one thing. We don't go out and recruit people. They see us, they like it, they come to us and they say, hey, how could I be part of this? That's how it has always been with us. We never wanted to get huge. We wanted quality people. But unfortunately, we have some undesirables sneak in or get in. I wouldn't say sneak in. They come in and they're not who they seem to be. And it just takes a while for us to get rid of them.
Yeah.
It's just like any other club. Everybody goes through the same thing, growing pains.
Yeah. So on the side of at the start, you guys were all super young and you're figuring it all out. How did it go for laying the groundwork for probates and stuff? And how has that developed into how probates are, or like how they?
Well, when we first started, I will say this, and we used probates as entertainment. As we matured, we realized these are men. We're not going to make them do something that we wouldn't do. So if a probate's asked to do something and he don't feel comfortable doing it, he can ask a member, well, let me see you do it first. And they have to do it.
Okay.
Most probates won't say nothing, they'll do it. But if I find out that they're making a probate do something that they wouldn't do, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to say something. And boy, I'll go after a member in a heartbeat. I'll jump on a member in a heartbeat. Because these probates, they're coming in, and a lot of them, I don't want them to get poisoned and get the wrong idea and leave, because we lost a lot of good people over, people that we had in the club that we thought may have been okay, and they ran them off, and then they're down the road themselves. But meanwhile, we lost somebody, they poisoned their mind, and they're gone. And it happens in all clubs. I mean, this is something that happens all over the years. People get disoriented with this and that. Very few people stay. I mean, I've been around 53 years, but you got to remember, me and Grub put this baby together, and I told him I'll be here till the end. And even when I went to prison, I stuck up for those guys.
Yeah. We'll get to that one in a little bit, but I'm really enjoying hearing about this early history. So obviously, like I said before, there's no TV to go off of. There's nothing like that. So did you guys see how other clubs around were structured? And that's where the probate stuff, like you took a little bit of stuff from all of them and seeing how the basic structure worked?
Well, we really didn't know how other clubs ran. We had a general idea from seeing what's going on, and I think we're one of the only clubs that call them probates. Everybody calls them prospects.
Yeah.
We did our probation a little bit differently. When we first started probating, we would give them just a top rocker. Mm-hmm. Now, our top rocker is gold lettering with red outlining. I was in charge of the patches ever since the very first day I became a Warlock. I was in charge of patches up until I got busted and went to prison. So I came up with the idea, when they start probate, we're going to give them a top rocker, but there was going to be no border around it. And a lot of times we've had probates take off. We lose the rocker, but it was no big deal because it wasn't really
The full deal.
Yeah. So what I did at a later date, I came up with a rocker and it said probate WMC instead of giving them the rocker. In other words, instead of giving them the top rocker, gave them a probate WMC rocker that they wore on the top. And when they went through their probation, if they made it, they get a full set of patches. Now they do things a little bit differently.
How is it now? Do they give them a
Well, they gave them a regular top rocker, then they get a bottom rocker. You get your city tabs. We didn't give out city tabs back then. They give city tabs. First, you get a top rocker. Well, first you got to be a hang-around. Then you hang around for so long, and then you go through a probationary period, and the whole thing usually takes almost 2 years from start to finish. A minimum of 1.5 to 2 years. It all depends on you. But you're not going to get in the club before 1.5. Those are the rules. Back in the day, the process was a little bit. In other words, you could be a member within a few months. Now it's different. Now the extensive background checks because of the cops trying to get in the clubs and stuff like that. We didn't have extensive background checks back then. We did background checks, but they weren't as extensive as they are now.
So like back in the 70s, if you guys had probates coming around, would you just go to their work and check them out if they're at work, or how would you go about? Or did you guys, since you didn't really have any run-ins with law enforcement that were on like a serious level, did you just, this guy is who he says he is until you had?
Well, in the 70s, we pretty much believed everybody, but in the 80s, it was getting a little bit different. So we started doing, little background checks, but, nothing extensive, like I said. And then we'd go to see where they lived and things like that, and hung out with them and got to know them, invite them over for dinner and try to feel them out. But, there's a lot of actors out there that play the role well and deceive you and fool you, which I got fooled in the late 80s. I got fooled by the feds. But anyway, and they all had, when they did the background checks on them, they all came out clean, and it showed that one of them showed that he was in jail, and they did this, and they had these charges against him and shit like that. But like I said, they knew what they were doing.
So into the 80s, we talked about the early 80s. The club was kind of turning a leaf for the general mentality of members. Then as you get into like the mid and the late 80s, what was it looking like? What was the day-to-day?
Well, we by 87, we was at a rally in Tampa, and one of our members got killed. And that was the first member that I lost on my watch. And of course, I was pissed. Now, we could have done a couple of different things. We could have I had to stop 2 of my guys from going in with the truck and them running these guys over and start shooting them. One guy was in the back with a semi-automatic rifle, and the other one's got a pistol, and they were going to drive through the crowd and start shooting these guys that we had trouble with. But I stopped it. I didn't want no more bloodshed. George got killed that day. I thought the investigation was a piss-poor investigation. The cops came. They didn't seem to know what the fuck they were doing. And then we got out of there. We all came home. And about a week later, the cops from Tampa, along with the gang squad from Orlando, come to my house to talk to me. And of course, I had nothing to tell them because I don't talk to cops. But when they walked in my fucking house, there were guns all over the place. And they looked at me and I looked at them and I said, them guns are staying right there. If you feel uncomfortable, then you need to leave. I said, because my life's been threatened and you're going to see guns all over this house. And I'm not going to take no shit from nobody. So if you're not comfortable, I said, we don't have to do this. So they sat down at the table and there's my 44 Magnum sitting right on the table. And we're in my dining room and they had two detectives from Tampa and they had the gang squad unit and they asked me a bunch of questions. Says, look, man, I don't know what the fuck happened. I says, I was all the way in the back when this shit took place. I was looking for my wife and I didn't know where she was and the shit happened and it was a big chaos. I really don't know what happened. I said, I don't know who stabbed George, but someone stabbed him and killed him. I said, that's your job. You go find out who did it. I don't know who the fuck did it. I said, but I know who my enemy is. I said, you all know who the enemy is. But I said, it's not my job to go after these guys. It's your job because I don't even know who the fuck it is. Because if I knew who the fuck it was, I'd go take care of the shit myself. I wouldn't even get you guys involved. They didn't know what to say. And then they started asking me some questions about some other bullshit, trying to trip me up. I knew what they was trying to do. They was trying to trip me up. I said, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So the meeting didn't last long because I had nothing to tell them and they left. But this gang squad agent, this son of a bitch, would literally sit outside our clubhouse when we have parties. And I'd say, oh, there's Gray House again. He was a gang squad unit for Orange County. And after 20 years, he retires. And what does he do? He becomes a gang squad unit for Seminole County. So anyway, we're in Orange County at the time. He's sitting outside the clubhouse. So I said to one of the probates, I says, oh, go bring him a plate of food and give him a can of Coca-Cola. Yeah. I said, go give him something to eat. So the probate goes out there. This is the compliments of Spike. So the cops are sitting right across from our clubhouse. And we weren't doing nothing wrong. Nobody wasn't doing anything wrong. We were just over there partying. And he'd sit out and I couldn't fucking believe it. He'd sit in the fucking front of the clubhouse and just sit there. And this didn't happen every day, but it happened. So anytime I would see Gray House, I'd say, hey, how you doing? And I'd keep on going. You know what? It's going to be friendly to him. And I'd send him out a plate of food.
So he's getting overtime on the weekends to come watch you guys, and he's getting free food. No wonder he was there all the time.
I don't think he was there for the food, but trust me, he wasn't there for the food.
You think did it bother him that y'all would send him out food like that?
I don't know what to. I couldn't read this guy. I knew that he wanted to get me for something. Mm-hmm. He tried to trip me up on all kinds of bullshit, and I wasn't doing nothing wrong. I was being who I am. You know, finally the feds come in and they tripped me up. Yeah. And I fell for it only because I was going through some hard times with some personal difficulties. Mm-hmm.
So let me make sure I got.
We're gonna have to break here.
Okay. Let's go ahead and break then.
We was a small club. You know, we only had maybe 60, 70 members back then.
So that was back in what, the late 70s?
No, I think that first California one was 75. The first one we had was in 75. And we got that one campground. Minnesota had a place, they had a place out on a part of the mountain where we camped. Everywhere we went, we always camped. It was always about camp. Now it's about motels.
It's supposed to be about camping.
Yeah, but listen, they went camping, and I said, okay. So I went camping with them one fucking night. So Fabian had his truck, pulled a horse trailer up, had me an air mattress, fucking most uncomfortable piece of shit I was ever on in my whole life. My back hurt me for weeks. I said, this is it. I said, fuck you camping. I don't give a motherfucker rat's ass. I'm 73 years old. I ain't camping. This is bullshit. I said, if I come to a party and I go home and I'm all crippled up, it ain't worth it to me. I'll come up, hang out with you guys, and I'll come back home. But anyway, we'll get started.
Anyways, we're back. Just finished up with lunch.
Oh, we're being recorded.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's all good. Like I said, I can edit it. Shit, I do need the timer though. That way I just keep track.
Do another 30-minute run.
Yeah, just so I can keep track of.
We'll do 30-minute runs. Stop for a minute, take a break. It'll be better. Just
regroup.
If you want a cup of coffee, I don't need one. I'm already.
I'm good.
I mean, just fucking more. I got more energy and I know what to do with it. And and the thing is, it's only going to get better. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So we were in the 80s. We were talking about the 80s, and then coming up on 87. Because when did you so he still bodybuilds. You can't tell because the shirts are hiding everything, but 73 years old, you're still out here lifting. So when did you start bodybuilding? Because I know that's a key part of the story.
So I came to Florida in 1970. I started lifting weights in 72. So I've been doing it for 51 years. I've won several competitions. I used to be really, really big. Now I just do it to stay in shape. There's no way I could eat and maintain the size I had before. And besides, who wants to be 250 pounds at 73 years old? I'm trying to get leaner and feel better.
Yeah.
It's all about feeling better, not how big you are, how strong you are, how tough you are. None of that shit doesn't matter to me anymore. It's about feeling good.
Okay, so you started in 72, so you'd been bodybuilding for
51 years.
Yeah, but at that time you had been bodybuilding for 15 years, and by 87?
Yeah, I would say about 15.
And then come 88, you're working out at your gym where you normally do, which is when we come into you meeting Steve Martin. It was 88, right?
Actually,
or was it sooner?
The Pop the gym. I was out of the gym business by that time.
Okay.
And I believe it was 88 when I met Martin. Yeah.
Okay, so you're working out, you meet this guy.
Yeah, he introduced himself to me. I was real leery at first, and then he was a talking type of guy. And the funny thing was he pulled up on the same motorcycle that I had. I said, "Oh man, you like Heritage Softail, same color as mine and everything."
Do you think that was a coincidence?
Well, you know what? I didn't think anything about it. I did notice that his odometer knob was missing, so I bought him an odometer knob and put it on his bike for him. And I believed it was his bike, but it was registered to Steve. He had some other name. I can't remember his other name that he had. He had a driver's license. He had military IDs. He had all kinds of shit. He had IDs saying that he was the same age as me. He was actually 10 years younger. But his IDs, I mean, they had this guy as, somebody who he wasn't. He said he was in Vietnam. He never went to Vietnam. We were supposed to ride up and go visit the Vietnam Memorial Wall. And I don't remember, something happened. I couldn't make it. Supposedly him and some of the other guys went, which was probably bullshit anyway. He was an actor. He's like Steve Martin, the actor.
Mm-hmm.
That Steve Martin, the actor.
Yep.
But he didn't. His last name wasn't Martin. He went by Steve. It was something else.
But that was his undercover name, was Steve something
Steve
else.
Martin. And he had this real long beard. His hair was all kinky. I mean, he did not look like a cop. And when I checked him out, you do a check on the DMV and it comes back and all this shit. But you know how the cops are. He was a fed. What do you expect?
They wash all that stuff.
Yeah. Now the background checks are more extensive, but I fell into a trap. And the thing was, the thing was, and it may have came up on National Geo, but they did a 90-day investigation. Steve Martin went back to his boss, and his boss's name was Maroc. And at the time, I was 40 years old. Maroc was 50. He was a cocky little cocksucker. I didn't like the son of a bitch. And Steve Martin went back to his boss and says, listen, Mr. Ingrao is not involved in any criminal activity. You know what his boss told him? Make something happen. Now, you become friends with somebody and you get to really like this person and you hang out with him almost every day and on weekends and you go riding and you're doing things together. And then you become tight with this guy, and you're talking to him every couple of days and you see him almost, I see him almost every day at the gym, and we go out and have lunch and talk and this and that. And you become friends with somebody, and if somebody's in trouble, you're going to try to help them. So what Steve did, he set this thing up, and I met those Colombian guys. And the way they played it out, I thought they were going to kill the son of a bitch. Anyway, so after we went downstairs, I wanted to go back upstairs and I wanted to do what I had to do. I didn't know they were federal agents. I was going to pop both of them. But anyway, I didn't do it because Steve stopped me. But I said to Steve, I remember distinctively saying to Steve, I said, look, Steve, I said, what the fuck can I do to help you? I says, how much do you owe these people? I said, look, Steve, I'll raise the money. I can raise money. I was good about raising money for different things, like for Down Brother. I mean, I raised $1,700 one day. Actually, it was more money than I was supposed to raise. I only needed about $1,500 or $1,600. I raised $1,700 in a matter of 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I said, we had a meeting, and we had about 68 people in the meeting. And I said, boys, get in your pocket. I said, we got a brother in trouble, and we got to help him. So I pulled out a $100 bill out of my pocket. Steve Martin threw in 100. A couple of guys threw in 100, and everybody else was handing out 10s and 20s, because not everybody had money back then. Some people only had a couple of dollars of change, and everybody threw in, and we wound up with about $1,700 to pay off a $1,500 in some odd debt, and to keep a brother in the club instead of kicking him out down the road. So I was able to raise money. Steve knew that, but he wanted guns because he was trying to entrap me. So what do we get him? Legal guns, basically legal guns. I made the mistake of showing him an antique an antique gun that I had. It was a World War II gun, stamped 1944, paratrooper gun. And it was converted to fully automatic. I never fired it. Now, when I acquired this gun was a pile of shit. You would have taken it and thrown it away. Well, we had one of the members in the club took the whole thing apart, soaked it and reblued it and refinished everything. It looked beautiful. I just kept it as a souvenir. I never wanted to sell it, never fired it. And I made a mistake of showing him my gun collection. He bugged me for 3 months to sell him that gun. I said, I don't want to sell it. I don't need the fucking money. All I get in good graces with I guess those Colombian guys, I can't remember, Eddie, they called him Eddie. I'll get in good graces with Eddie if I could at least get him this gun. So finally, after 3 months, I sold him the gun, and that's where I broke the law. I could own the gun, but I sold it without a federal firearms license. So the license is a $200 license. If I had that license,
you'd been fine.
I would have been fine. So they got me on that, and they got me on a bullshit conspiracy. Now, my attorney said, look, we can beat the gun charges and the explosives, but we can't beat the marijuana. I said, that's bullshit. I didn't even smoke marijuana back then. I said, how the fuck? I said, beat marijuana charges. I said, all I did was say 525 over the phone. He said, yeah, but he was passing on information. I said, I'm so stupid. I should have seen that I was being set up, because one person told me he couldn't get a hold of the other person told me he couldn't get a hold of that person. And I was the go-between guy, and I said every time I called A or B, I was able to get a hold of them. A light bulb should have went off in my head. But being that I was under all the pressure I was, and I started to drink back then, and I was doing a little bit of blow, I wasn't smoking, I let my guard down and I got busted. It was my own fault. I was stupid. I'll never make that fucking mistake again.
Yeah.
I served 9 years, kept my mouth shut, did my 5 years probation. After 15 years, I came back to the club.
So you met him in 87 and then start hanging out with him. He's a friend. At what point did you start probate?
88.
Was the Columbia meeting before he was probating or after?
No. They actually never probated.
Oh, they were charters then.
I started him as a charter member. Yeah, I started him as a charter membership, and this was going on for several months.
So they were a charter member. It was
a charter. They were charter members, and I said, I need somebody in Fort Lauderdale because my enemies were in Fort Lauderdale, and I want to shit in their backyard because they kept shitting in my front yard. So I wanted to put a chapter there. I did not know that these guys were agents and that none of them lived in Fort Lauderdale, but they did have a clubhouse in Fort Lauderdale. And we went down to the clubhouse in Fort Lauderdale. It was a nice place, but we didn't know he was on camera. And they had a party down there, and they specifically sent a couple of our members to go buy some cocaine for the party. They gave them the money to buy the cocaine, sent them to a place to get the cocaine, and then later busted them for buying the cocaine, but the charges got thrown out in South Florida. And the judge said in the courtroom, because they arrested 43 of us, but there was only about 6 or 7 of us that went to jail. But any charges that were in Fort Lauderdale, the judge heard the testimonies and stuff. He says, it looks to me like the ATF agents are the criminals in this case. I dismissed this case, and he slammed the thing and threw the whole fucking thing out.
Really?
Yeah. And Boudin, the stupid bastard that he was, took a deal, and another guy took a deal, and if they would have just pled not guilty and was part of that, they would have thrown the whole thing out. So Boudin wound up doing 11 months, a convicted felon 3 times. I thought that was kind of strange. A convicted felon for gun possession, third felony, and gets 11 months. Here I never was in trouble in my life, and I got 9 fucking years. Something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And more mine was a conspiracy.
Okay. So then so we go throughout the years. If you guys really want to see the details on it, you can go and watch Warlock Wars was the accurate one, right?
Warlock Wars by National Geo will tell the true story of what actually happened. The only thing that they left out was the part where I said that 4 of the 5 agents were dirty. These guys were doing drugs. They were doing illegal stuff. I even watched one of the agents smack some citizen in the head with a gun, and I know it wasn't fake blood because that blood ran out of the side of that guy's head. And they were doing cocaine, smoking pot, and all this other shit. And they did tell me, don't let Steve know that we do this, because we're not supposed to do drugs. We're supposed to be protecting these Colombian drug dealers. And we have to be sober and straight all the time. So I ain't gonna say nothing. But Martin was the only one that was clean. And when I brought it up, they hushed everything about it. But those agents were dirty. Otherwise, I would have never you know, I don't trust anybody, you know. They tried to say, the agents tried to say they was a simulating. I said, really? They were simulating? Well, why would you assimilate and do several lines of cocaine? And how do you assimilate smoking pot when you inhale it and it comes out your nose? How do you assimilate that? When you suck something in, and if you're not inhaling it, you just out your mouth, right? But when it comes out your fucking nose, that's not simulating.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't simulate cocaine. 4 of them were dirty. So would you expect cops to be snorting cocaine, smoking pot, and drinking and driving and beating citizens up with guns? Cops don't do that.
Nope, not supposed
Dirty
to.
federal agents do. And that's what the fuck they were. Dirty fucking federal agents. You know, they were pieces of shit. But they were going along with Martin. Martin was the only one that was clean. He was by the book. And Martin knew I wasn't involved in anything. And he felt real bad about it. I watched tears out of that man's eyes when I was locked up. He came over and I said, he tried to bring me a pack of cigarettes. I said, get the fuck out of here. I don't want nothing to do with you. I seen a tear in his eye. He felt real bad about it.
So backtracking to when you said that his boss said to find something,
Something happened.
Yeah, make something
Now,
happen.
You got to remember, Steve Martin was a very intelligent man.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that he went to West Point, graduated West Point, and he majored in psychological warfare. Psychological warfare, you can make anybody do whatever you want. You trap them into anything. It's just like a card trick. I get out a deck of cards, and I already know the card you're going to pick, but you don't know the card you're going to pick. So after you pick the card, I say, you got the ace of hearts, right? Then you pick the ace of hearts, and you go, yeah, how do you know? Because I made you pick that card. It's a game, psychological warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they got me. And I fell for it. I let my guard down. I made the mistake of falling in the trap. I paid my price. I paid my dues. I hold no animosity against anybody. If I want to be mad, the only person I can get mad at is myself, right? Well,
so were you? Oh boy, what am I trying to say here? Were you upset? Like once you realized that Martin was clean, were you upset? I mean, obviously you were upset, I'm sure, but was it kind of like, oh, well, at least he was clean and fuck them other guys because they was dirty, or?
No, I was upset about the whole thing.
Yeah.
I was upset about the whole thing because here I get locked up. They confiscate 2 of my cars, my motorcycles. What the fuck did they have to do with the deal? Those things were bought and paid for. I had stocks that were confiscated that I bought from monies in when I lived in New York. I bought an insurance policy from my father's friend. He was in the insurance business, and I think I bought that when I turned 18 years old. And anyway, while I lived in Florida, I decided to sell the insurance policy, and I took the money, I turned around, and I bought penny stock. And I bought quite a few shares of penny stock with the money that I got. Anyway, I bought the stock, and at the time, the stock wasn't really doing anything at all. I bought Waste Management Corp. And in the 70s, Waste Management Corp wasn't doing anything. By the 90s, that thing skyrocketed. Meanwhile, they seized all my stock. And I bought it in 1976. They confiscated stuff from me that I did not. I purchased with my own hard-earned money. And they said, well, the reason why we confiscated is because we spent $2.2 million on an investigation. I said, you guys are full of shit. You spent $2.2 million on an investigation that only lasted a year? I said, what the fuck were you spending your money on? And it's like, things just didn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pissed. Yeah, I was pissed. And then to add insult to injury, the way I would not cooperate, so the way they wrote my PSI up, they had me. They wrote it up like I was a terrorist. So every time I went to a prison, they had the right to refuse me in their prison. So what did they do? They put me in the hole. And I sat there for weeks and weeks. One time I sat in the hole for 5.5 months until they figured out where they were going to send me. Sent me back the fuck up north, where I just came from, because I was trying to get close to home. And here I'm back up north again. And then took my game time from me because they thought I was on a disciplinary transfer. It was what they wrote in your, whatever they write in your pre-sentence investigation report follows you the whole time you're in prison. So if you don't cooperate, they make life in prison tough for you. I was on a, they call it diesel therapy. I was in a bus, handcuffed and shackled. Your belly chained and handcuffed and shackled like this sitting down. And God forbid you got to take a shit. You might as well just shit in your fucking pants because they ain't taking them shackles off you. And, but fortunately, your body goes into this thing and it doesn't, your whole body shuts down. So I'm on a bus for 23.5 hours. 23.5 hours. Everybody else is sleeping, you hear them snoring, and said, I can't sleep handcuffed and shackled. So they give us these stupid little sandwiches to eat. And they give you 3 meals a day, but they were box lunches. Crap. 1 piece of bologna, and 1 piece of cheese and some stale thing and an apple and maybe some crackers. I eat the shit, man. And I don't even remember what they gave us to drink, a little juice drink or something. So I'm on this bus for 23.5 hours. We get off the bus, and depending on what time you get into the prison, whether they want to, depends on the time you get to prison, whether they process you right away. If it's changing in the shift, you'll sit around for hours before the next shift comes on because processing takes 8 hours. So it's almost a whole full shift. So I got there wee hours of the night, and I'm tired. I mean, I'm so tired, and they have us all standing up. So I said, they take the handcuffs and shackles because now you're in the jail, but you're in this hallway. You can't go anywhere. So I sit on the floor, and I go and I lay down. I'm laying on the floor, and the guard comes over and he goes, you can't lay on the floor. You got to stand up. I said, no, I'm tired. He says, stand up or I'll put you in the hole. I says, go fuck it. Come on, put me in the hole. You'll be doing me a favor. I said, at least there's a bed in the hole. This is a hard fucking floor right here. Take me in the fucking hole. I don't give a fuck. And so they didn't know what to do because I didn't take no shit from the guards. So when I did that and the guard left me alone, everybody got on the floor and took a nap because we had to stay there for hours before they processed us. What were we going to do? Stand up like fucking idiots? And, and the other thing too, I had respect for the guards that had respect for me. But you have some of these guards that the shit goes to the head. They get a badge and they think they're Johnny Badass. And when the guards show a little bit disrespect and they have you stripped down butt naked, they tell you to bend over, show me your, spread your ass. I'd say, does your mother know what you do for a living? I said, do you like looking at my nuts? Is that, you get off on that shit? And they can't do a fucking thing to you. I used to fuck with the guards. They couldn't stand me, but I didn't give a fuck. These cocksuckers would put me in the hole for no reason at all. I spent 2.5 years in the fucking solitary confinement for nothing. I didn't do a fucking thing. It's just, it's what they wrote in my pre-sentence investigation report. The one prison I was in, they would have these people come and visit it. And they would pull me and 2 other people out of the prison, put us in the shoe unit to all the guests that walked through the prison, because they was afraid that I was going to tell them what it was really like and then how bad these assholes treated you.
Yeah.
So they would lock me up.
So let's back up to the beginning of that. So from 88 till 91 is when those feds are hanging out, right?
Correct.
Okay, so then would you say that last probably 90 and 91 is when that war between you guys and your enemies was been the worst, the most dangerous?
Well, what happened was George got killed in '87, and just a few little skirmishes on the street with them, but they got killed over in Tampa. You got to remember, but it wasn't the people from Orlando that killed us. Actually, it wasn't even. It was somebody from another club that killed George that wanted to become one of them.
Okay.
But no, nothing. We really didn't. The fight didn't escalate after George got killed. It was still in the works. Like I said, this war went on for 33 years. 20. I was involved in it for 20 years until I got busted. But when Bear got killed, that's when they put a hit out on the four bosses in Florida. And I was one of them. They managed to kill Bear. And I got busted at the funeral. I don't think they were planning on busting us at the funeral, but the feds were getting scared of their... What happened was the feds feared for their lives because now we had a all-out war going, because I told everybody that day, make sure you go down to when you go down to Daytona for this funeral, make sure you got a gun on you. I had 3 guns on me. Wayne Sanzo had 6. We gave him the nickname of 6 Guns.
So, because at the time, so you had 4 chapters here. One of them was Orlando. One of them was Fort Lauderdale. And you had, what were the other 2?
St. Pete.
St. Pete and...
Orlando, St. Pete.
Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale.
Tampa? Or was it Clearwater?
Melbourne.
Melbourne? Okay.
No, I'm sorry, Brevard County.
Okay.
We had Cocoa Beach and we had Brevard County, and we just combined both of the chapters together.
All right. So, and then at the time, the Fort Lauderdale chapter was all those undercover feds, right?
Right, correct.
So that means that out of those 4 hits, which I think this has already been stated in some of the other documentaries, but at that time, Martin was the boss of that chapter. So he was scared for his life because he was one of the bosses that had a hit on him.
Correct.
Okay.
Matter of fact, they were kicking indoors in Fort Lauderdale trying to find these guys. But nobody.
The feds were kicking indoors, or the other guys? The enemies?
No. The rival club were kicking indoors trying to find these guys.
Okay. So then...
To add insult to injury, I had a ride. I scheduled a ride. It was our first trip to Fort Lauderdale at their new clubhouse. And I made sure I had everybody, and we rode past our rivals'
clubhouse
motorcycle shop.
Oh, the shop, okay.
And we made sure they seen us. So we rode in a pack. And of course, you ride in the pack with 68 people. People say, oh yeah, it was 200 of them. I mean, 68 people is an impressive pack. But you tell them it's 100, 150, nobody knows. Who's going to count? You know what I'm saying? It looked like a lot of people.
So then, of course, Bear was murdered, and then going and doing some research and rewatching Warlock Wars and the Gangland episode and everything.
Bear was with us in that ride down to Fort Lauderdale,
which was previous to him passing.
Yes, correct.
But man, going and watching that, and then watching the interview with his daughter when she was grown up, man, that was rough.
I know.
That was rough to watch. You could tell, I couldn't imagine being that kid,
Well, I love Bear, but people would overstepping people started overreaching back then.
So you guys weren't always a 1% club?
No, they started that crap before I became in the club. They started that 1% crap in 2003. And there was only a couple of them that actually put the 1% diamond on.
Oh, okay.
The rest of the guys wore a 23 diamond.
Okay.
And then some of them decided that they're going to go ahead and put a bird on a diamond with a one. In other words, they're going to have a 1% diamond patch with the bird over the top of it.
Yeah, there's actually a couple other clubs I've met like that have about the same lineage of not 1% and then getting pushed to that point, or people want it. So then everybody gets busted at Bear's funeral, and I know from watching the other
I
stuff.
think 46 of us got busted at the funeral, and like I said, only about 6 or 7 of us went to prison. They all beat the charges, and most of them got busted for that bullshit in South Florida. And that's when the judge said, it looks to me like the feds are the real criminals in this case. Case dismissed.
So then I know from watching the other documentaries that are out that Joe Sagone was saying that he had been with those guys over by, I guess, their clubhouse, or one of them was supposed to have an apartment, and he saw one of them flash their badge to a landlord guy.
Yes.
Did you guys ever end up hearing about that, or what happened?
Joe
It sounded
Sagone
weird.
said that on TV, but that was not true. Had he would have told me that he thinks that Martin was a cop or he's seen a badge, I would have definitely questioned it about it. I think what happened was the fact that Joe Sagone got too involved in all these. Joe Sagone was trying to make some money, and he was trying to make deals with Martin, and he got too far into it, and they had all the goods on him. And when he went to Martin to confront him about the badge, Martin said to him, I don't know this to be fact, but this is how it played. I believe it played out. And I'll explain to you in a minute why I think this is how it played out. I believe Joe Sagone happened to be at supposedly Steve Martin's place, but it wasn't. It was a safe house. And this guy was concerned because he was a neighbor there, and that place has always been off limits. And so he pulled up, wanted to know what's going on, and he showed him a badge, and I think from a distance Joe seen it, confronted him, and Martin said, look, you've already did this, and this, and you're in a lot of trouble. If you work with us, we can help you out. So, like I said before, Joe was looking at 15 and a half years. He wound up doing 2.5. So you tell me, what the fuck do you think happened? 15 and a half year sentence for all of it. He had more time. He was getting more time than me. And he only got 2.5 years on a 15 and a half year sentence. He even admitted to ratting out some drug dealers when he was out on bond. So you tell me if he didn't have to cooperate. How did he get 2.5 years breaking the law? He had 2 sentence reductions. There was a lot of things that didn't add up, especially when we was in the same prison together. He told me he was being transferred to Estelle, and Estelle, South Carolina prison didn't open until 7 months after he left the prison. And if you're going to go to another prison as an inmate to help open it up, you only go 3 months in advance. He left 7 months in advance. Supposedly, he wound up going back to the Middle District to get some time knocked off his sentence for him helping. For time getting knocked off his sentence for him helping the feds make sure that I went to jail. And then he got out, because I heard that he got out of prison after 2.5 years, and he disappeared for a couple of years, and then he came around and he wound up living in Florida. He became a member of he went back as a member of the Warlocks because he went out as a member, but nobody knew that he ratted those Puerto Ricans out doing a drug deal.
And you heard that from him firsthand, right?
He told us. He told me and Chuckles right in prison, because I said, how much time did you get? He goes, 6.5 years. I said, how the fuck did you do that? He says, well, I was out. I was working for this place doing tile, and these guys that I was working for were doing a drug deal, and I let the feds know and knocked time off my sentence. I said, you're a fucking rat. Well, of course, I'm in prison. I didn't know he was going back to the club. I said, hey, you got a rat out there. I thought he was going to be in prison as long as I was. So who knew the boy? So I get out of prison, and he's a member, and he had been a member for years. And of course, I'm coming back, so I didn't say nothing. At the time when I came back, I didn't know he got out in 2.5 years. I thought he did 6.5 years. I really thought he went to Estelle. But after I started doing some research and asking questions, Estelle didn't open up until months later. And when they seen him out of prison, because he was seen in South Carolina, because he went back to South Carolina. He was spotted in Orlando because his mother lived in Orlando. And he had gone back to South Carolina because he was married. And I guess him and his wife broke up. But they seen him out of prison after 2.5 years. So how the fuck do you do that when you're facing 15.5 years of federal time? You had to give somebody up to do 2.5-year sentence.
Yeah.
So he's a fucking rat. And I hope I never see him, because I'm gonna fuck him up.
I figured that was kind of off, because watching it didn't make sense that if you're a real brother and you see something fucked up that could jeopardize everybody, like, I'm raising the alarm.
I would never say stand down. I would never say that. I'd be a stupid idiot. If he would have told me something wasn't right, everything would have stopped right on the spot. I would have confronted Martin and probably would have whooped his fucking ass, cop or no cop. I don't give a fuck. You come and you deceive me or you lie to me, I'm gonna fuck you up. Don't lie to me, motherfucker. I will fuck you up. And one thing I can't stand is a liar or a thief. And as far as I'm concerned, Joe Sagone's a piece of fucking shit. And there's a few more pieces of shit, but I'm not going to get involved in that. But he's a piece of shit.
Okay, so, and then on that, right? So out of all those guys, all of you guys that were actually indicted, there was the 6 of you, right?
I think there was 7 of us that went to jail. But you got to remember, one of them got 6 months. Boudin got 11 months. Wildman got 3 years. Fuzzy got 2. Fuzzy got 2 years, I think. 2 or 3 years. I'm the one who got most of the time. Like I said, Billy Ray got 2 years. I think Fuzzy got 3. Wildman got 3. Boudin got 11 months. Mark Mace got 6 months. And those were all the ones that that was the only ones that went to prison.
That was another note I had written down to confirm that you were the one that served the most time out of that bus.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I wasn't supposed to. Sagone was supposed to serve more time than me, because he was involved in a lot of illegal shit that I did not know about.
Mm-hmm.
How I would have known how to put a stop to it. Because the whole thing about this thing with Martin and the guns, it was to help him, to keep him from getting killed by his Colombian drug dealers, which was all bullshit, all made up, just to entrap me.
You thought you was just protecting your friend.
Yeah, I would have done anything for him. I'd have jumped in front of a bullet for him. And I already said that on National Geo, so none of this is
new
news. No, this is the real deal. That's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
With me, it's like death before dishonor.
Mm-hmm.
I've always believed that. I'll always be that way. And these guys that can rat on one another, they're pieces of shit. They don't even deserve to breathe the same fucking air I breathe.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to clear that up, because that part of most of those documentaries was pretty iffy, because you got guys saying stuff that doesn't line up, and you could see it in the documentaries. On
the History Channel was all bullshit. Everything on the History Channel that was called
Paid in Blood. Mm-hmm.
And that whole thing was bullshit. They showed a member, our National Secretary Treasurer was in a motorcycle accident, and his whole face was all skinned up, and he had scabs on it and everything. And they show a picture of him, and they try to say, this is what happens when you cross the Warlocks. We didn't beat him up. He was in a motorcycle accident. This is the kind of bullshit that these faggots put on the news, and people believe that shit, and they eat that shit up. 90% of the shit that's on television and on the news is all bullshit. And if you believe it, then you're as dumb as in a box of fucking rocks. And that's the truth. You can't believe all that bullshit you hear.
Yeah, definitely. Back to what we said earlier about not believing everything you hear. So then, right, were you still a member when you went to prison after that bust?
No, this is what happened. So there was so much heat on me. I had just turned 20 years in the club.
Mm-hmm.
February 7th, I had 20 years in the club. I think I got arrested on February 18th. So I was still the national boss when I was in jail. I thought I was getting out of all this here shit. So after a couple of months, when I realized I wasn't getting out of jail, that's when I turned the position over to Wayne Sanzo. And I wrote a letter of resignation, handed to Wayne Sanzo through my attorney. I wrote a letter of resignation. I said, listen, at this time I am resigning. I am resigning as the national boss. And I am going to retire from the club. And I'm going to be away for a long time. And, but basically, what I told the feds was that I quit. I have nothing to do with them anymore. But I actually resigned as national boss, turned it over to Wayne, says, look, I got 20 years, and at the time you could retire after 10, so no one had no problem with me retiring.
And how long had you been the national boss at that point?
6 years.
Okay. And then
I was an officer I had been an officer for 20 years in the club, some type of officer, whether it was an enforcer, vice president of a chapter president, national secretary treasurer, and national boss.
And then Grub was obviously the first national boss.
Grub was the first national president. And the only reason why he became national president because we started to grow. He became national president once we in 1975, I believe he became national president. We had a Minnesota chapter, and then we had the California chapter. That's when he decided we need a national boss. He became national boss, but I was his right-hand man the whole time.
Now, were you the national boss directly after him?
No.
Okay.
He actually gave the position to another member who he thought can handle the job, and he destroyed the club. We had 7 chapters. We lost 4 of the 7 chapters. We went from around 68 members down to 18 members. We was getting ready to lose 1 more chapter, and we was getting ready to dissolve. And I came in and I just took the club over. I took the club over by force. I'm not going to get into detail, but I took the club over by force and got rid of Butcher.
But was Grub okay with that because he didn't like how it was going either?
Actually, Grub, at that particular time, Grub was not an active member. He kind of stepped away from the club for a little while for personal reasons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, only for a short period of time he stepped away. That's the reason why. It was getting too much for him, and he had some personal issues going on, so he handed it over to Butcher. And of course, he was around for a little while, and then we didn't see him. He'd just come around once in a while, and Butcher just ran the club into the ground.
Okay. So then back to where we was at. I just wanted to touch on that because we didn't earlier. So then you resigned. The feds thought you'd quit.
Right.
And then you were essentially exiled at some point, yeah?
Well, I wasn't exiled till I came back and wanted to come back.
We're back. So we were talking about you were technically retired from the club while you were in prison, and then when you come back is when you were exiled or realized that you had been.
Well, they said I was exiled, and what it was a member that was a retired member that was mad Not that he went to prison, that they took his motorcycle. The other one that was mad at me was the one with the gun that only got 11 months. But if he didn't flash it, or if he would have fought it in Fort Lauderdale, he could have beat it. But if he didn't flash his gun, he would have never got in trouble. And the other one that was mad at me wasn't even fucking around at the time. And but it didn't matter. There was the people that knew me, or heard of me. I will tell you this, and one of the members who I have the utmost respect for, his name is Diamond Dave, and Diamond. Yeah, Diamond Dave's a stand-up brother. He is like, anyway. Diamond was caught up in the federal bust where he did 5 years. Same shit happened up in Virginia. He got caught up in the bullshit in Florida. He did 5 years of time. And he had heard so much about me. And he says, well, if this guy is the person he is, and he didn't rat, why don't you want him back in the fucking club? What did he do? He made a mistake. What the fuck did he do? He made a mistake. You don't want him back in the club? He says, this guy is everything you said he was. Why wouldn't you want him back? So Diamond was the first one that stuck up for me. And everybody else, all the bosses, everybody was all for me except for these three guys. And they ain't even around no more. Oh, except for one of them. But when this one person, I won't mention his name. I don't want to give him I don't want the shit going to his head. But this one person that was against me, and like I said, I watch him. He's like, he was okay with me coming back because when I came back, this North Florida chapter tried to bring me in the wrong way, and they were doing something dirty, and I exposed them. And they shut the whole chapter down because of me. And I exposed something that was getting ready to happen that wasn't going to be pretty. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to get into it. But, they wanted me to be a part of it because they knew my background. They wanted me to be a part of their elite squad. And I wasn't going to have a part of it because what they were going to do was wrong. So when I exposed them, it eliminated the North Florida chapter, and they brought me back in, and then here I am today.
And that's why you moved up this way, right? That's why you're so far away.
Well, I moved. What happened was, I wanted to get out of Orlando, so I couldn't do anything until my probation was over with. So as soon as my probation was over with, I put my house up for sale. I sold my house, and I said, I got to get out. I didn't know where I was going to go. At first, I was going to move out of state. Then I said, nah, I better stay in the state. And then I came to Putnam County. And I didn't realize it at the time, but they had a chapter in Putnam County. And I was going to become part of that chapter. It was part of North. They had 2 chapters. One was in Putnam County, and one was, oh God, I can't remember the name of it, but it was quite far away. But they had combined both of the chapters together and just made it North Florida.
Oh, okay. And then, so were those 2 or 3 individuals the only ones really keeping you from coming back in? And then once
basically, they were the only ones.
And then once everybody else was like, well, you guys don't have a fucking valid argument, then it was like, all right, cool, you're back?
Yeah, basically.
Did it come with like a probationary period? Did you have to completely start over, or were you welcome?
No, I went to their national and they gave me a patch back, and it was really, really cool. When I was national boss, I patched in Big John. And December 10th of 1988, I believe it was. Was it December 10th?
Oh. And he was the one that took over.
And he was national boss, and then he wound up patching me in when I came to his national. So it was a bittersweet deal.
And was he the one that took over as national boss after the bust?
No.
Oh, okay.
Wayne Sanzo, and then they had
Oh, that's right, because you handed it over.
right, and then they had other bosses that had it after him, but they only lasted about a year, got voted out, and got somebody else in. But all the national bosses they had after Wayne Sanzo weren't worth a shit anyway. But I wasn't around to see it, but I knew who they were, and they weren't worth a shit.
Yeah.
And they ain't even around in the club anymore. You know, Big John definitely did a good job. And the guys we got today all did a good job. But the ones, except for Wayne Sanzo, the ones from Wayne Sanzo to Big John, they weren't worth a shit. And like I said, those fuckers ain't even in the club no more.
Yeah. And then, so you got out in 90.
I got out at the tail end of 99, just before the year 2000.
Okay. And then it was.
Then I had 5 years of non-association probation.
Now, while you were on non-association there at the end,
I wanted to go to Head's funeral because I was real close with Head, but I couldn't go because if I went, I would have violated my probation and went back to prison. But now everything was cool with me and the Warlocks, because when I went to work for Home Depot, Chris, Brick, Head, and several of the guys that were in the club at the time, because now they're deceased. All these guys are all deceased. They all passed away. But at the time, they would come into Home Depot and see me. Hey, how you doing? This and that. And I'd see them and shake their hand. You know, no one had said anything ill or bad about me. It wasn't until I was coming back, Billy said, hey, you ready to come back? And so when I got out of Orlando, I just had to get out of Orlando. I didn't want nothing to do with Orlando. I couldn't stand Orlando no more. I had lived in Orlando from 1970 to 2005. I was done with it. I didn't even recognize, when I got out of prison, I didn't even recognize my neighborhood. They even moved the street. I couldn't even get to my street. I had to go, used to make this turn and go to my street. Now I had to go way up the road to get to the street, and I had to come back all the way around again.
And your sentence was 9.5? It was
9 years and 1 month.
Okay. So obviously, like, being in there, it sucks because you're away from everybody, family, friends, the club, your brothers, everything. But then coming out and not having that brotherhood to go back to, that probably had to suck, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it was so strange because here, when you're in prison, they tell you when you could, when to eat, when to go to bed, when to shit, when to piss, well, not so much shit and piss, but when you could eat, when you could do this, when you could do that. You move on the hour, every hour is when you can move. Everything's locked down. Then everything would open for 10 minutes. You had 10 minutes to move to wherever you were going, whether it be work, whether it be the chow hall or whatever it was. I think you had like 8 or 10 minutes to move on a compound. Once they rung that bell, those doors were locked. And if you're stuck out there, you're in a lot of trouble. You wind up in the shoe unit. But
okay, so then you come back in, and then now while you're on non-association, though, there was a second bust that the club had in 2003, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and did that affect Florida as well? I know that it affected Virginia.
It affected Virginia, and I know it affected. I know of one person in Florida that went to jail over it. And
then Diamond was involved with that one, yeah?
That was Diamond, yes.
Okay. And then, of course, I don't know. I know of one individual in that, and they weren't away a super long time. But then, did you hear about that one?
Yeah, that was. That was. Hang on a minute. He was a member out of Brevard. That was Spanky.
Okay.
Spanky got 15 years. Wow. He got out. He had 5 years non-association, and Spanky came back. He did his halfway house time in Ocala. Then he wound up back in Brevard County. He was part of Brevard County. Now he's up out of the Ohio chapter. But Spanky's still around, yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
At the time because you were probably working at Home Depot, yeah?
No, I didn't know Spanky. I didn't know Spanky before. I didn't know.
I'm saying at the time that bust happened, did you hear about it through the grapevine or on the news or anything? Or was that unbeknownst to you?
No, I can't remember where I heard it, to be honest with you. I don't remember it being on the news because the actual bust happened up in Virginia, so I didn't really catch it on the news. It was just something that I heard.
Yeah. Did that probably had to hear it would have probably been weird because
I said it was like, well, that was one of the things. That was one of the things that happened at the meeting. So when I came back around at this meeting to come back in the club, the first thing that Big John said, he says, well, if you don't want Spike, what about all the other guys? He says, we got to kick them out too? That were involved in this last bust? Do we kick them out too? And of course, everybody gave it some thought. So, in other words, Big John opened the door for me to come back. So a few months later, when the National came, I wound up coming back in the club.
All right, cool. And then, of course, I think we touched on this a little bit at the beginning with your introduction, but you're 73. You're about to hit your 54 years.
No, 53. 53. I'm 53-year member. Yes.
And you're still active. Obviously, this is his street glide right here behind us.
My beautiful Sportster.
Yeah, your Sportster.
No, hell no. The Sportster's a dirt bike. We call them dirt bikes back in the day. I did own a Sportster, but yeah, that's a street glide. It's a 2017 street glide. Bad son of a bitch, boy. It's pushing 126 pounds of torque, 123 horsepower.
Yep. So you're still out here, you're still active. There's plenty of guys that are younger than you that aren't. So that's super fucking cool.
Oh yeah. I ain't going nowhere. I outlived everybody so far. I'm gonna outlive all these guys. I'll be with the new generation. They're already starting to call me Gramps. I want to knock the shit out of them, though.
So in that aspect, how has it been? I really want you to go into this one. How has it been being around for so long and seeing what everybody, I guess you could say, bases their idea of a motorcycle club off of, and how has it been with the club and the club cultures that's evolved over the years, and what do you think about where it's at now?
Well, back in the 60s and 70s, bikers were really wild and they did a lot of crazy shit. Things have calmed down quite a bit. Things have gotten a lot better, and a lot of these 1% clubs that were at war with each other finally are realizing that only two things happen. You're either dead or you're in jail. Do you want to go to jail or do you want to be dead? Or do you want to get along? So a lot of the clubs are realizing this now. And everybody's starting to get along except for two clubs. They just want to be dickheads. And the reason why they're dickheads, because they're the shit that everybody dumps out of their club, and they go into these two major clubs, and they're getting so big, but all they got are shit members, because they're getting everybody's shit from all, they're getting all the sewage from all the other clubs. So what do you really have? Nothing. And you know what? Why worry about it? Because they're all fucking rats anyway. So they like doing illegal shit. So when one gets busted, 50 of them go to jail. So let them, fuck them. I don't care. They're going to destroy themselves. We don't have to go to war with them. They'll destroy themselves on their own. And besides, they're all punks anyway. One-on-one, they won't fight you. Yeah. The only way they'll fight you if there's 10 of them and one of you, and then they got to use guns. Yeah. What kind of a fair fight is that?
It's not. But on the topic of like we talked about how from the 70s to 80s people changed, but like what do you see from like the original generation, like you and the other original guys, to guys from the 2000s and 2010s and then probates now? Like how do you see differences?
We're getting a lot of guys in the club. You know, it's not like the old days where you're getting guys coming back from the military where they were fighting the badasses. Now, we still get some military people in, but you get a lot of guys in and they're more passive and they're really not hard. A lot of them aren't hardcore. And, they're good guys, until they prove themselves otherwise. But it's totally different. The bikers from the 50s, 60s, and 70s are totally different than what we got today. You can't You can't compare them to one another. Us old school guys, we got that old school mentality, but at the same time, we don't want no war anymore. We smartened up because no one's going to win. No one wins. The only people that win are the fucking cops. You cannot win by going to war. You don't win. You're either dead or you're in jail. And the only one that wins is the cops, because the cops hate us. They want to, the cops want us off the street. You can't trust the cop. I don't trust nobody anymore. I don't talk to nobody. I pretty much keep quiet. I don't say a whole lot to anybody. I don't know who I can trust anymore. I hate talking on the phone. Yeah. I'd rather go and talk to you in person, 100 miles away out in the woods somewhere, to talk on the damn phone.
Yeah. Well, okay. So on the flip side, what are some of the things about the new guys, let's say from the 2000s and up, that you can appreciate or that you do like to see about that the young bucks are bringing?
Well, it's funny that you asked that question, because mostly we've been recruiting old fuckers. Now, we just recruited 3 youngsters in the Brevard County chapter, and they bring a lot to the table. The energy, the brotherhood, and hopefully they don't get poisoned down the road and leave. I just hope they could stick around. People are amazed when they find out I have 53 years in the club. Most people don't even think I'm 73 years old. They says, well, how old were you when you got in the club? What were you, like 10 years old? I said, no, I was 20 years old. Yeah. I wasn't 10. I said, it'd been nice if I could have got in 10. I'd have 63 years.
Well, now, like you said, recruiting older guys, it's like, give it another 20 years, it'll be really hard for anybody to be a 50-year member, because even if they're...
We only have one possibility of a 50-year member. I adopted this young kid. He probated for 2 years in the club. He's from Indiana. And the only reason why he couldn't get a patch was because he had to be 21 years of age. Mm-hmm. Now, a month before his birthday, we was at the National, and I had asked special permission to patch this kid because he was still 19 years old.
He was 19?
No. He started probating when he was 18.
Fuck.
Yeah, he was probating since he was 18, but he was 20 years old when he got patched. But he had actually about 35 more days, and he was going to be 21 years old. So I basically talked to his boss, and I said, because I was going to go to Indiana to put a patch on this kid. I really took a liking to him. He's I adopted him as my grandson. I love this kid. He's got heart. He's not a big kid, but man, he's got heart. He's a good motorcycle rider. Great kid. I text him every day and say good morning to him. I love the kid. And being that he was my grandson, I couldn't cut him no slack. So when he got his patch, he earned it. He had to go swimming in the fucking lake to get his patch. And they pulled some shit. It's another long story. I won't get into it. But anyway, he's a solid kid. He did a great job. And man, people were amazed. And I couldn't, we just couldn't hand him a patch, special privileges from coming from me. So he did an entertainment for us. I said, this is old school probating. I said, come on.
I mean, if you feel comfortable talking about it, we have the time. So did you actually throw his patch in the lake?
No, we didn't. Basically what happened was originally they were going to go and put the little guy patch in the lake, and they were supposed to tie it down on this little buoy about a foot down so he could get it. Well, first of all, you never make a probate do something that you wouldn't do. His boss, the big guy that he is, and I'm talking about a big guy, I didn't know it was him that did it. I said, don't put that little guy patch in there. Put something else. So what they do, they get a little rubber ducky. They took this little rubber ducky, and they were supposed to go and tie it to this buoy, and he was going to go and grab this little rubber ducky and get it. And he was going to swim back to shore, and I was going to hand him his patch. But what do? They put it way at the bottom. Now, where he was at, I could stand up in the water and be up to here, but he's shorter than me. So he kept swallowing water trying to get that
He's
thing.
trying to bob for it and trying to get to it.
Yeah. So he couldn't find it. So his brother jumps in and he couldn't find it. So the guy that put it in there had to tell him, it's at the bottom, it's at the bottom. Because there were 4 buoys there. And they said it was at the buoy, there was the white buoy, because they had 3 blue ones. So they finally got it. He came back and I handed him his patch. And he was soaking wet. He couldn't believe it, but he had a great time.
That's
it worked out well. Let's put it to you this way: it was an unforgettable moment for him and the nation.
Yeah. See, there's a handful of people I've met. Like, there's a guy in the Pacific Northwest with that club that I was talking to you about before, and he's a couple years older than me. And man, like, I'm not special by any means, but it's hard to meet guys that are close to as young as me that are this into this stuff. And when you do, it's cool. It makes you feel like there's going to be a future for it, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's super cool.
Well, the thing that we got to do is, in order to keep the club going, we got to stop getting these old guys in, because we're getting guys in. They got this wrong with them, that wrong with them. They're coming in their 50s, and
they're trying to probate. And I got to take my insulin, but I'm
we had a couple of members come in, and a year later they're dead.
Fuck.
Yeah. Q-Tip. I think he wasn't even a member for a year.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah, he died, and then we had that kid from Sebring. I can't remember his name. He was a good kid. He got cancer. He was in for about a year, and he died. And he was probably 30 years old.
Yeah.
And I really admired that kid too. And he said he was so sick. And he told his chapter. He said, "Look," he says, "I want to visit every chapter before I die." So a couple of brothers got in a van, and they carried him because he wasn't doing good at all. And his hair, he lost all his hair and everything. And they took him to every chapter.
In the States, at least.
Yeah, in the States. They took him to every chapter. He got to say hi and goodbye to everybody.
That's awesome, but that's also extremely sad.
Yeah, he was a good kid. He was a quiet kid. He was from Sebring. I really liked him.
How old was he?
About 30.
Really? What was wrong with him?
Cancer.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's really good to hear that there's still good sides, because usually the first answer off the rip, and maybe it's because, you know, in the biker world you definitely get a little grumpy, you know, the older you get maybe. And
I definitely got grumpy.
Yeah, but so plenty of people, if I ask like, hey, what do you think about the generation now? The first thought is to, you know, they're a bunch of fucking pussies and this and that, whatever. But it's good that there's still good sides to it too, right?
Oh, well, yeah. Most of this Gen Z generation and the millennial, they're all fucking pussies. But you get some tough guys out of there, you know.
There's a handful.
They're all followers. Most of these people out there now, these kids growing up, they're little spoiled little bitches. You know, you slap them and they cry like a little bitch. Don't bother me. Don't fuck with me. I'm an old guy. You fuck with me. You're gonna go see Jesus, or you're gonna see the devil. Whoever you believe in is who you're gonna go fucking see.
Yeah. Oh man, what else do I got here? Another question I didn't ask about your return. When you came back to the club and you got your patch from Big John, were a lot of the brothers that you'd been around before, were they welcoming to you? Was it kind of standoffish? Like, what was the general?
Funny you asked that question. First of all, a lot of the people that were there before weren't there when I came back. And yes, everybody was really receptive. I got a great reception. Yes, everybody was glad to see me come back. These guys heard about me. They heard about me. They heard, you know, they heard all these stories about me. But, you know, and then I came back and they were glad to see me come back. And now I've been back for many, many years, and all those guys are all gone. We got a whole new slew of guys.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'm the only one left from the 70s. We only have 3 left from the 80s. We have, wait a minute, we only have 2 active members now from the 80s.
Wow.
But we have 4 that are still alive, but 2 are active and the other 2 are retired. We have 9 from the 90s and 7 of them for England. And from the 2000s, I don't know. I just was more concerned about who's left from the...
So one of those 2 that are from the States would be Big John, yeah? That was active
Big John.
in the 90s?
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, wait a second. Yeah, it was Big John. No, Big John's from the 80s.
Oh, he is? Okay.
Yeah, Big John was 88. I think it was December 10th. And
he's older than I thought.
Jesse, I think Jesse is still active. And Jesse, Christopher passed away. He was from the 80s. So it's Big John and I think Jesse, the only ones that are active. Oh, and Wheels were 80. So there's 3 of them. My mistake. There's 3 left from the 80s.
Now, you said there's still an original left, but he stepped away from the club, correct?
Billy Warlock was an original from 1971, but Billy retired after 50 years, and due to health reasons, his health is not well. He's living in Indiana, but Billy does go and visit the boys up in Indiana, and they go visit him. And hopefully this year, when my wife retires, I'm going to go pay Billy a visit. I'm going to start traveling around to all these chapters before it's time for me to pack up and go home.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. I'm glad that you're planning on traveling.
Oh, yeah, this year. And hopefully with the stocks and everything, things will look good and I'll have money in my pocket. I can go traveling. That's the plan. Before I'm 74 years old, I'm going to make a trip and see all the chapters.
Well, at least with the health you're in, I'd say you got at least a couple years.
My health is, I'm in great health. I wasn't always, but I'm doing better now.
I'll probably, if it's not already in the video when we talked about it earlier, but I'll probably try to get some digital versions of his competition pictures and we'll throw them in here somewhere. So if you guys see that, you'll know what we're talking about. But honestly, man, like that's really all the questions I have. I mean, you covered everything. I mean, here's another one that I do have. Where do you see the club world, or at least your club, being in the next 15 to 20 years?
Well, first of all, I don't know if I'm going to be here in 15 or 20 years. And I'm hoping we aren't at World War III with that moron we got for president. I really believe we're going to be in World War III before 15 years is up.
Yeah, but just for you and the club.
But if we don't go to World War III, I hope to see the club get better and better. And not necessarily bigger, just better. Okay? Because you got all these big clubs out there that got 2,000 members, 3,000 members, and it becomes a business. It's not a brotherhood, and they don't even know who. And they got members in the same state, and they don't even know who they are. You know?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand, almost. You know.
I mean, I've met everybody in our club, and we got several hundred people, and I've met everybody. I can't remember their names. That's why we call each other brother, but I've seen them before. And the thing that I do, since we have so many members and we go to these functions, I try to spend time with a different member each time I go to these parties. I try to spend a little time with them, talking to them. And I also like to spend time with probates to try to educate them and get them on the right path and make sure they're not being abused. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when I say abused, in such a way as taken advantage of.
Yeah.
But
and you said that you also, when you go to events, you usually steal probates once every event, right?
Every event, I have a meeting with all the probates, yes. Every big event. There's 2 a year, and I have a meeting with all the probates. And it usually lasts about 20, 30 minutes. Basically, all it is a pep rally. Well, all it is welcoming him in as a probate, and tell him what's expected and what's expected, what's not expected, what to do, what not to do, and stuff like that. And then I have one of the newest members who was a probate, and he was a gunnery sergeant, and have him come in and give him tips on hydration and probating and what you should do, and about carrying a little bag, which and all that other bullshit that goes along with it.
Which the little bag that probates carry around is called a probate bag, right?
Yeah, the probate bag. Yeah, make sure you got your probate bag. Make sure you got this in the bag. Make sure you got your that big mag light and all that stuff. I can't keep up with all that crap. We didn't have all that crap when I was, but we were just little wild Indians back in the day, back in the 70s.
Just figuring it out.
Oh yeah, we was figuring it out. Yeah, now so everything's totally different.
So then, where do you think if there was another big war or something that would be that after the fact that would be kind of a repeat of, let's say, Vietnam, where you're getting more quality, more life experience people in that are going to want brotherhood when they come home? Or do you think that
World War III is not going to be a fighting war? It's going to be a button pushing war. Okay, you're not going to get the Russians or the Chinese to fight on our soil. Everybody's going to be pushing buttons.
Okay, well then let's back up to this then. When 2001 happened, 9/11 happened, as those guys were coming back, did you get any people that were veterans from stuff like that?
Yeah, we got Bopper, Curry, Seahawks. Yeah, we got several people out of there.
And it was the same kind of, they were a different breed than the civilians that you're bringing in that you meet at the bar?
Absolutely, yeah. Military trained. They have this, their focus is different. Mm-hmm. Their mentality is different. Now, the last three guys that we probated, one of them was a veteran. And you can tell the difference between him and the other two young guys.
Now, not to say, though, that you can't get people like, at least in my experience from when I was...
Well, yeah, you get disciplined people.
Yeah,
you get
like
people.
Fighters. Fighters are definitely a big one.
Yeah.
People that grew up real poor, real rough.
Yeah.
They know what's
You can
wrong.
still get those people, but most of the young people today, they ain't, unless they've been in the military, some of them ain't worth a shit. Mm-hmm. You got, well, for example, my grandson in Indiana, we call him Threads. And he wasn't in the military, but he's one hell of a guy. Mm-hmm. He's stand up. He's the only one in this club right now. He came in when he came in 1 month before he was 21. He's the only one that possibly, if he lives long enough, could get 50 years in the club. Other than that, unless somebody came in the club when they was 30 and they'll be 80, maybe.
It's hard to be an active member when you're 80,
I don't know about that.
Well,
I know
not for you.
I know a guy that's 78 years old and been in this club for 56 years. He just celebrated his 56th year, and he was one bad
dude.
Bad dude back in the day. He's different now, and me and him were at war with one another. We're two old gangsters. We were at war with one another, and he went to prison. He got 50 years, but he got out after 35, I think it was. And I did my 9 years, which was nothing compared to him. And we were able to shake hands, let bygones be bygones, and we get along fine. But here we were at a shooting war with one another. Now everything's cool with us.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, we're not going to mention any names.
Yeah,
sure. I don't want to upset anybody.
Oh no, for sure.
I'm not here to make anybody look bad or say names or nothing like that. I'm just talking about our club. It's all about our club.
Well, and again, if we're looking at like historically, if someone wanted to get upset about stuff from the 70s, the 80s, or even the 90s, look at how many times you've said so far that most of those people are not around.
Yeah. So they're either dead or Or some old son of a bitches now.
Yeah.
Or they quit the club. They ain't no one around. Most of them
That's
are
what
dead.
I mean by not being around. Is most of them, they get out, they go hang out with their kids or grandkids. So it's not to saying that there's not good dads in clubs. There's plenty of them, but it's definitely.
There's a lot of good dads in club. There's a lot of good dads in club. I know one guy that's got a son, and he's from West Virginia, and he's got a hell of a son, boy. I'll tell you what, he raised a hell of a son. I'm not mentioning no names, and I love the man to death. And he's been in the club 20 years, and I watched him get his 20-year patch, and I really love the guy. Like I said, there's a lot of guys in the club I really love. They're really great. They've been around for a while, and I'm glad to see it.
Mm-hmm. And
I think you know who I'm talking about, but we're not mentioning his name.
I think I've met him.
Yeah, you met him. I know you met him.
Man, I think so. This is one that you'll probably end up wanting all your brothers to watch when this comes out. But this is the last question I have, is that if you could tell all the new probates, all the new hang-arounds coming around, like a little bit of wisdom to get them through and to put them on the right path, what would it be?
Run that by me one more time. I'm sorry. I heard the question, but I want to hear it again so I can answer it properly.
If you were to have one piece of wisdom that you could give to all the new hang-arounds, all the new probates, all the new brothers to really put them on the right path and give them the right information, what would it be? If you could tell them one thing.
Always be aware of your surroundings. Have eyes in the back of your head. Don't trust anybody. Don't believe everything you hear. Search things out. Make sure what you hear is not bullshit. And if something doesn't feel right to you, do not do it. And if you're not sure about something, you know how to get a hold of me. Call me. I have no problem talking to probates. I got a lot of probates that got my phone number, and I get calls a lot of times asking me questions about history. They get questions about the history of the club, and one of the members will ask them about history, and they'll call me up and ask me, and I talk with them. Probate is a future brother, so I like to educate them so they become a good brother and they stay around 20, 30 years. Not everybody's going to stay in the club for 50 years. You got to be insane. But I never had any kids. I got married. I had a bad marriage. I married the wrong woman. I wound up going to prison. What else do I got? I have the club. These are my brothers. They've always been my brothers. I'm close with I'm close with a lot of these guys. They're my brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of these guys, their wives are awesome. I love them to death. They're my sisters, And, but I don't expect everybody to stay around. You get 20 years and that's a lot of time. Most people in the military retire after 20 years. So somebody stays 20 years and they retire. I ain't got no problem with them. It's the guys that come in for 1 year, 2 years and they want to quit. Well, you should have thought about it before you came into it, because you're going to hang around for a year before you start probating. If you don't like what you see, why even start probating?
And they're probably the first people to be getting tattooed up and wearing forever this and forever that, and forever means forever.
Oh yeah, you get some of these new guys come in and all of a sudden they get their patch and they think they're Billy Jack, Billy Badass. I don't know if you remember Billy Jack.
No, I don't.
Okay, Billy Jack. Billy Jack was a loner. He was a bad son of a bitch. He was a Green Beret. This movie came out in the 60s. And the biker club fucked with me, fucked everybody up in the biker club.
Really?
Yeah, he was a bad. Called him Billy Jack. Everybody wants to be a Billy Jack. And it was called the Born Losers.
Oh, okay.
The movie came out in the 60s called The Born Losers. And they fucked with the wrong guy. His name was Billy Jack. Didn't bother nobody, but he fucked everybody up. He killed the boss. He had enough of his shit one day and he shot him square in the head with a gun. I think it was a rifle.
I'm gonna have to watch that.
Yeah, it was called Billy, The Born Losers.
Okay.
I can't remember the actors' names. They're probably all dead now. But it was an interesting movie back then. Of course, the way they have movies today and compared to what they got, you'll see it was a 60s movie, old type movie. But it was a good movie. They were bikers from the 60s, thought they could go around harassing people, fucking with women and doing whatever they wanted to do. And Billy Jack stuck up for everybody. And they beat him up a little bit, and Billy Jack came back and he fucked everybody up. But he was one of the guys that came out of the war, and that might have been Nam. I can't remember. He came back and he was a war hero, and they started messing with him. And
if it was a movie in the 60s, it'd have probably been World War II based.
I don't know if maybe it was the late 60s.
Oh, maybe.
I like I said, but going back, I'm
way before my time for sure.
It's almost 100 years ago.
I don't know if it's that long.
Well,
not that long.
I would say Billy Jack came out around 69, 68. So it would have been the Vietnam era.
Okay. All right, cool. But I mean, I really appreciate all your time with this. I really hope
you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. I enjoyed it as much as you did.
Yeah, I hope that this ends up being, and like I said, and for anybody else that's watching this, if any other clubs see this or anybody that's got any kind of influential importance to the club world, and you want to reach out, wherever this ends up at, probably on YouTube, I'll have all the different links where you can reach out about it. And just know that all of this will come out. It will come out edited, and anything that isn't the truth or that maybe he's uncomfortable with is going to be squashed. We're not going to have to worry about it, and that way there's control over the right stuff coming out. This isn't the History Channel. This isn't Gangland. I'm not trying to make this any kind of sideways Sons of Anarchy doctored up interview. So this is the truth. It needs to be the truth, and it needs to be documented properly. So thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Cool.